Like to call the work session of the Isabella County Board of Commissioners to order.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, a roll call, please.
Commissioner Embry.
Here.
Linsky. Commissioner Engler. Commissioner Marino. Commissioner Swaney.
Here.
Commissioner Hutchinson.
Here.
Commissioner Hope.
Here.
All present, Mr. Chairman, except for Commissioner Jazinski.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Up next would be approval of the agenda. We'll start the meeting with general public comments. We have a report from MMR, their annual presentation. And then an Isabella County Administrator Controller report. We have no appointments to boards and commissions. We'll have committee reports, Finance and Administration Committee.
Finance and Administration Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
Justice and County Affairs Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
Good. We have no business under Human Resources and Public Works Committee, no intergovernmental affairs, no administrator controller issues, no unfinished business, no new business. We'll have general public comment again towards the end of the meeting, and then commissioner announcements and then adjournment. So with that, is there a motion to approve the agenda? So
Support, Hutchinson.
supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have an agenda, and up next is general public comments. For anyone for general public comment? One that wishes to speak, step up to the seat there. Okay, seeing no one for general public comment, we'll move right along to presentations and special reports. MMR annual presentation, Brett Hansen.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hanson.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for having me back for our annual presentation. I got rid of some of the old pictures that you've seen for the past 15 years and actually got some relevant local pictures in at this time and changed a few slides up, but the first few slides will look very familiar to you. They're the things that we typically report on every time, and then I'll share some things that we've been up to here recently.
Mr. Hanson, here, and pull that mic a little closer. Oh,
How's that? Better?
Microphone's bouncing on me.
Okay. So just some key points that I kind of go over every year. We're a nonprofit agency. We currently have a fleet of over 120 vehicles, a staff of over 600. In this division, we refer to the local division here is a 3-county division. It's Isabella County, Gratiot County, and Clare County. So we've got about 115 local employees here in this area. One that we're not a subsidized entity. We operate solely off fees collected for service. This is our 27th year in Isabella County, and all of the accreditations that we've had all along, we continue to maintain them. The biggest one being the Commission on Accreditation of Ambulance Services. That's a pretty tough one to get. Not many agencies are around here within an hour and a half or two have that, so we're pretty proud of that. That's a tough one to go through. That's a picture of our dispatch center in Saginaw. So when an emergency call comes into Isabella 911, as soon as they determine that it is a need for an ambulance, they transfer that call to our dispatch center. All of our dispatchers are emergency medical dispatch certified. So not only are they dispatching, they immediately start giving pre-arrival instructions, everything from bleeding control to how to do CPR and walk the caller or the bystanders there through giving care prior to help arriving, which is a really nice thing if you don't have any background doing that. So talk a lot about our critical incident planning. We actually have one here locally a week from today involving Isabella Emergency Management, multiple police departments, along with some fire departments. And I will say that in the 10 counties that I've managed or helped manage over the past 15 years, no county is better prepared than Isabella County. It's a lot of hard work from everybody involved, but it's really amazing the level of planning they do here and things like the Asher plans for the schools. Josh Later and the sheriff worked very, very hard on all of those, and a lot of communities don't have those. So it's really a lot of good relationships, long relationships there that lead to that. I'm going to talk about our patient satisfaction. So every patient that we transport here gets a survey in the mail to fill out. Most people don't fill it out. We're lucky if we get about 10% back. A lot of people, I think, see it as junk mail and they don't want to take the time to fill it out. But those that do, here in Isabella County, the positive response that we get from the people that fill that out is over 98%. Anytime we get a negative survey, if someone writes on there that they had an issue with something or weren't happy with our service, they get a phone call from me directly, which is not my favorite part of the job, but we do it. As far as community partnerships, a lot of creation of local jobs with our primary education site here for EMTs and paramedics. And we do the medical first responder training for the local fire departments. And our DART team, which is our disaster team, and our special pathogens team are still standing and still in place. Unfortunately, we haven't had to use them in the recent years. And I leave this slide in there every year just because I was so proud that I walked all the way from the towers to Broadway and Fancher. I'll just keep leaving that in there. These are examples of some of the other things that we do. There's obviously, this is a lot bigger list. These are just some things that you'll see us out in the community doing. Last year when I was here, I talked about a optional state protocol that we adopted it in partnership with My Michigan Health, where when we responded to an overdose call where opiates were involved, we have that in the kit in that picture that we can leave behind either with the patient or their family or anyone living in the home. When someone refuses transport, we will try to leave this kit behind with them. And it's got two doses of Narcan in it. More importantly, it has local recovery resources, phone numbers, and who to contact and reach out to. So I checked and we actually ran, I can't see that number. I think it's, yeah, well, there's 30 calls less in 2023 than we did in 22 for overdoses. And that's obviously not just due to us leaving those behind, but it's just another piece of hopefully the solution to prevent deaths that could be avoided. So during 2023, our primary education site here, we produced 42 EMTs and 6 paramedics. The reason that number is so different is because the additional length of time of training and education for a paramedic is about another 18 months after your first 15 weeks. So it's difficult to sell that length of time commitment to a lot of people, but we still do have some that go through it. Currently, our numbers are good. I have around 14 in process right now through the paramedic programs. One really interesting thing that we started doing this year is late last year, we were awarded a rural health grant through Michigan Department of Health and Human Services that allowed us to do something really unique where we were able to hire 20 individuals off the street as full-time employees and pay them to attend a 10-week EMT academy. And that actually worked out really well for us. There's the group. Due to the language and requirements in that grant, we couldn't do it in Isabella because it didn't meet the definitions of what they were calling rural. So we had to do it in St. Louis. So we just have to push these courses just across the county lines. We did one in St. Louis, and in January, we're going to do one in Clare. But all these people end up coming to work for us. They stay working for us full-time once they pass the course and they're licensed. And we're optimistic that we'll continue to see those numbers. Hopefully we can continue to get those grants. But I put some pictures in here. They're a very excited group of people. We actually had like 37 applicants. We could have picked 20, but we ended up picking 17 because we wanted to be picky. We wanted people who presented well, who you would be comfortable with having in your home or your family's homes. And out of the 17 that we picked, they turned out fantastic, and they are here working now. So just some bullet points about the contract that you've seen before. It's obviously things like cooperation with Isabella 911's an understatement. We have a great relationship with them and everybody here. It was last renewed in December of 2020, so it'll be 2025 when we'll need to re-sign that. The only signature on that document who's left is Mindy. So we'll get fresh signatures and names on all of that. Our response times, Area A we define as Union Township in the city of Mount Pleasant. They're at, for 2023, they were 92.2%. Area B is the remainder of the county, and that was at 78.2%. And what we strive to achieve is 10 minutes or less in Area A and 15 minutes or less in Area B. And that's for what we determine to be a priority 1 call, which means we have our lights and sirens on. One thing that I recently did was I became a primary instructor for a program called First on the Scene. It's a National Association of EMT course that's designed for lay people who don't have any emergency or medical background at all. It's it's a community course that covers everything on that list, from activating the 911 system to bleeding control. It's about a 3.5-hour course. I just did the first one a week ago tomorrow. We had 20 people and 19 showed up, and everybody was very positive and said that they learned a lot and they felt a lot more confident in being willing to jump in and help out in an emergency situation. Spent a lot of time with the hands-only CPR and AEDs. People, I think, get a little intimidated with that device, even though it's fairly simple once you've had some training on it. But it was very positive, and I at some point I've got them scheduled now through August. So in September, October, I'd like to offer some here if we could find a venue. A venue like this would be perfect. And I could do a lot more than 20 people in here because I have enough assistant instructors with me. But I'll circle back on a venue location as we get closer. But that's a real positive thing that we've been doing. And any questions?
Tips.
I had about the pathogen, or what's that all about?
So yeah, we're part of the Region 1 special pathogens team. And what that is it's obviously MMR employees who volunteer to be on this team, and they have to be fitted for things like level 1 hazmat gear and PAPR, respiratory PAPRs. We have isolation units that go inside the back of our ambulance, which is essentially a giant bag that isolates that patient and the crew from everything else in the ambulance. And really that picked up a lot of speed when there was a big Ebola scare here in the US. And we identified that we needed to be able to move patients in a different way than we always have if they were highly contagious with something like Ebola or any other kind of. We've never had to use it yet, but we do have it in place if we have to. So just to safely move them from point A to point B. So.
I just want to say, thank you to you and MMR. Definitely a great partnership with Isabella County. Something, gives a lot more reach and ability than we could on our own, this partnership. And also I wouldn't say that, maybe unfortunately, but I've had experiences with MMR at the rink. Now, we just had 3 broken bones throughout the year this year, so it wasn't too bad. But they've always been very professional and quick, and definitely grade A service for our community and the hockey players there.
Well, I appreciate that very much. That makes me feel good.
Very good.
Just a comment, and I'm not surprised, but I was glad to hear you say that Isabella County is well prepared for an emergency. Appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
All righty. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Hanson.
Thank you.
All right, and up next, Isabel County Administrator Controller Report.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I did want to let the board know that I attended the honoring, healing and remembering sunrise service on June 6th for that commemorated the 90th anniversary of the closure of the Industrial Indian School here in town. And I've always tried to get up early enough to make that. And this year I finally was able to, and I will just say I don't think I will ever miss that event again. So if you haven't taken part in that, you definitely should. The very next day, I got to attend the District 6 meeting of our MSU Extension. You know, our district director, Eric Karbowski, is housed in our county. And the staff from District 6 MSU Extension was there to give updates. It was a really positive day. You got to hear all the good that they're doing. And something I didn't even know, that MSU Extension recently helped our day treatment center write a grant for new kitchen equipment to serve healthier meals for the kids. So there's these connections that, you know, I was totally unaware of, but what a fantastic day. And we ended with touring, I hope I do the name service, Mishkikikan, and that is the gardens that the tribe has put in out on Leighton Road down by the water tower. And they've got a hoop house out there and some gardens and growing some pretty neat stuff out there. So I learned at that training that Mr. Eric Karbowski, there's congratulations in order. Mr. Karbowski, we now refer to as Dr.
Wow.
Karbowski. Yes, he has received recently his doctorate in behavioral health for agricultural educational leadership. So congratulations to him.
Yes.
I do want to give a shout out to Director Griffiths from 911 and Emergency Management. Mark recently completed his Certified Business Continuity Professional training. And if you think of business continuity, this is in the event of a disaster, you want to maintain operations, right? Continuity of operations type of training. And he certainly displayed that level of expertise last fall when we had to evacuate the county building, and he helped us do so. I don't normally share my screen. I'm going to take the opportunity tonight, if you allow me, to share a picture of the county building that I just referenced that we evacuated last fall. Wanted to give you a little update on the asbestos abatement and share what we're likely to see when we go back for rehab. So if you all remember, the asbestos abatement was a little more aggressive than we had hoped for, and both sides of every interior wall had to be removed because we found the asbestos was applied after the metal studs were put in place. And so in order to get the asbestos off the studs, originally we were just going to remove one side, then we had to remove both sides of the wall, rendered the studs useless. So this is pretty much what we see post abatement. That is third floor of the county administration building. Pretty shocking. Those spaces that we remember just aren't there anymore. We did look at what the cost of building new would be, because right now in our temporary spaces, we're kind of proving that we don't need as big of a building as we left, right? So even at a smaller footprint, a new build is just too cost prohibitive. So we are working hard to figure out how we can afford the rebuild of this building. As you know, we do have written into built into the zero-based budget, our draft fiscal 25 budget, and going forward, has an annual payment of $750,000 built into that to be able to afford a bond payment going forward. We'll talk a little bit about that on your agenda today. But I just wanted to share that photo with everyone. The abatement of all 3 floors is currently complete except for the mechanical room. They're coming back in July to finish abating the boiler room. We are working, of course, with Spicer Group on a design plan of what that will look like. So I'm excited to fit us all in, maybe less than 3 floors and to save some money. Another project that is ongoing for us at the county, we had the draft wage study come to us as the RFP required towards the end of April. But we still do not have a final wage study. We do continue to work with Amy Sell. As recently as a week ago Monday, I was on a call with Amy Sell and a department head to work through some of the concerns they had about the process and the data that was shared. During the process, adequate comparables couldn't be identified or gained for our unified trial court. There aren't a lot of unified trial courts. And so the trial court employees were actually removed from the wage study, and trial court is going to pursue their own court's wage study, hopefully with a firm that has some experience with court employees and maybe can get further data than MESAL could. So this Thursday, the day after tomorrow, is department head meeting, and we're going to continue the conversation with department heads and electeds at that meeting to see if they've got any concerns about the process before we move forward with that. Just wanted to give you that update. Some positives here. We are working with Middle Michigan Development Corporation, Director Nieport from Community Development, to research and apply for several EAGLE grants that are available to us. These came to our attention from DTE, the solar park that was just approved with conditions, puts us in line for some grants from EAGLE in some sizable amounts. Those have some specific uses, and we'll probably talk at the next finance committee in July about that grant. There's a couple others that kind of like environmental justice type of grants that we may be able to use towards the rebuild of the county administration building. So that's super exciting. Thank you, Director Nieport, for your assistance in that regard. Thank you, MMDC, as always. And just a little shout out, tomorrow night is Council of Governments, Co-Township, all 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for me, Mr. Chairman?
Any questions for Administrator Frost? Thank you. And we will move along to Finance Administration Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First item for the Finance and Administration Committee is to consider ratifying and placing on file the May 31st, 2024 invoice list in the amount of $239,015.13. The June 7th, 2024 invoice list in the amount of $2,591,280.25. And the adjustment list dated June 13th, 2024. As for the May 31st invoice list, that was totaling $239,015. The few items that were broken out that were over 5,000 included JBS contracting for our COA pavilion, the payment progress bill number 6. We're getting really close, aren't we? Yes, ma'am. It looks really nice out there. We have Spicer Group for $13,000 for the solar review, professional services through community development. We have our usual manpower, contracted labor for recycling, and postage refill expense for the trial court. Beyond that, gentlemen, the usual bills. I know we've all seen them. They've all been sent to us. They've gone through NEDOC, gone through county administrator. We've all seen them. So hearing no questions on that. May 31st invoice list. We'll move on to the June 7th list. This is a much more substantial list, obviously totaling 2.5 million. We have a $2 million payment for our May construction charges for the facility. We have a $21,000 charge for the air monitoring services at our administration building from Northern Analytical. Make sure that the air quality is what it needs to be in order for us to potentially go back in and start to rebuild. I see a $59,000 payment for the AED Heart Saver project, the 2% grant for Central Dispatch. AEDs are absolutely phenomenal. I've been now to 2 different demonstrations from Mr. Griffiths and his group, and they are phenomenal. I know if anybody out there is listening that owns a business or a church or an organization of any kind, please reach out to Mark Griffiths at Emergency Management and get yourself an AED. They are very simple to use and they will save lives. I guarantee you, they're pretty special. Again, shout out to Mr. Griffiths for making this happen. Next item I see here was the Fahey Schultz for the solar plan review for $36,000. And then we had drain work for approximately $120,000 for Spicer and Mog Trucking and Excavating, Bill's Custom Backhoe, and then also with Fahey Schultz doing legal review for the drains. One thing I did notice down here from the sheriff was the unmanned vehicle technologies for the unmanned aerial vehicle. I know that's covered under a grant as well. So those are the big items. I didn't know if anybody had any questions about any of the items that were on the inside.
I meant to get an email up before, but I was just going to ask if the Northern Analytical Services, how much longer are we going to need to do those services since they haven't finished, I guess, since July?
I think all they will have left to do is after the abatement of the mechanical room, Northern Analytical will have to come in and test that area to make sure that it's meeting the thresholds. I think very little left for Northern Analytical.
And those have been, I mean,
Pretty substantial.
20,000 at a shot for testing. Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah.
But they're coming back clean. So
Yeah, that's good.
that's the key element there. You know, just reassurance that we have a clean building.
I was just gonna say the unmanned aerial vehicle, a lot of that was donations
Right.
from
Yeah.
constituents, so, and businesses.
Thank you to the businesses that did help us provide that. I know the sheriff is probably excited to have that available to him. As always, I do like to try to point out the difference in our monthly invoices between the general fund expenditures and our other pass-through fund expenditures. Just for this month alone, we had $213,606 coming from the general fund versus the $2.6 million in pass-throughs. So a lot of this is monies that are already designated, and we're just signing off on the fact that they're going to get paid. So I just want to make that point clear. Again, 213,000 versus 2.6 million. So no other questions regarding the June 7th billing? We'll move on to our adjustment list dated June 13th. These are our normal and usual adjustments to avoid late fees and also to receive early payment discounts. I know we do this a lot. I used to do this a lot too with Gordon Food Service discount, and those add up over the course of a year. So again, thank you, Sheriff, for doing that. And again, voiding late fees, that's important as well. Did we have any questions on those, gentlemen? None? All right, hearing none, we'll move those to our regular board meeting this evening. Second item is to consider approving the prime contract change order number 21 with Clark Construction in the net additional amount of $107,574 and authorize the board chair to sign the same. I believe, there she is. We have with us Senior Project Manager Heidi Heights Kindle to run through these changes for us. Good.
Can you hear me? Hopefully. Okay, all right, good. Evening, everybody. So in front of you, you have PCCO number 21. This total is an amount of $107,574. We are still taking these funds from buyout. Right now, current through today, we have a remaining buyout of $53,380. And we still have not touched our contingency at this point of $781,774. So a total amount of $835,154. We are about 75% complete with the project at this point. And kind of doing the math there with the buyout and where we're standing with construction, we are about 38% remaining with buyout and contingency at this point. So kind of running through the list here on this PCCO, we have PCO number 57, which was for CCD 18. During some changes with walking through some items with the sheriff and kind of walking through the doors and security and stuff like that, we needed to make some changes with adding some intercoms, card readers. We added some keypad changes. We also looked at phones. We added some security there, stools at phones. We also revised some TVs, added some TVs. We had added some additional floor boxes. And then we had video to the TVs and phones added in this CCD. We also added some HDMI cords for the TVs in some of the offices in that area. We had to revise some doors with some security changes, adding the card readers and some locks. That total there was $190,649, and all that came from buyout. CCD 23 is next on our list here, which is PCO number 116. In this one, we kind of did some flip-flopping. So sheriff had changed phone carriers. And with that, we were able to save quite a bit of money there. We removed all the data for the phones because he worked out with his new provider that they would do all the cabling. We also removed some TVs. The sheriff could get those at a better cost savings for the project. And there were some CD players noted, some speakers, coax cable, and some Miracast devices that we removed from the project as well. With these changes here, we had a credit of $93,132, and that there was added back to the project and back into buyout line. The next item was PCO number 117. Sheriff is providing his own key box for the jail. So we had that in our detention contractor's scope of work. So we did remove that, and that was a credit of $1,138, which is added back to our buyout. Next item here is PC number 122. We had 50% completion. We walked the site with Michigan Department of Corrections. And during that walkthrough, a few things we needed to correct. And one of those was we had to add some, we had privacy walls, but the privacy walls kind of had a ledge where someone could stand on it and jump off of. So we added a 45-degree masonry wall on top of that to make sure that no inmates could stand on there and jump off and hurt themselves. So that was an add to Strauss Masonry to do that of $9,490. And we had the painter paint those as well. So that was $253. The next item then, again, that was also from buyout. And that was a deduct of $9,743. And then the last item on our list is PCO number 132. We had venturi boxes change. Noted on the drawings was 8-inch. The actual unit themselves needed to be 10-inch ductwork. So we had to make a change there. And that change was $1,452, which was taken for buyout. So the total of all those changes then was $107,574. Is there any questions?
Commissioners, any questions? No? Heidi, again, thank you very much. Thank you for your due diligence in all of this and working with the sheriff to try to reduce costs. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time,
You're
ma'am.
welcome.
All right, we'll move that item to our regular board session this evening. Item 3 is to consider approving the easement for electrical facilities between Isabella County and Consumer Energy Company to install electric 201 North Main Street and authorize the board chair to sign the same. Madam Frost, would you mind taking this one?
Absolutely, Commissioner. So this easement for electrical facilities is what I believe to be the restroom building for the downtown town center project. So that it's sits on the other side of our parking lot to the west of our county administration building. The city, I think, allows a 5-foot from the property line build, if you will, and consumers require a 6-foot easement on each side of the line. And so the easement does need to come into county property. Director Shoemaker from Facilities has been out and inspected the area denoted in the map. Legal has inspected the easement document, and both are agreeable to the contents. Director Shoemaker knows about the limitations of, you know, can't plant trees in that area and stuff like that. Dumpster, can't set dumpsters there, build fences, that kind of thing. So he's in agreement with it, and this easement is needed to install electric for that.
Right. And there's no cost to the county, if I understand correctly.
Correct. Even the cost of filing the documents, I think, is covered by consumers and or the city.
Good.
Zero cost. Just good neighbors.
As we should be. Commissioners, any questions on this item? Hearing none, we'll move this item to our regular board session shortly. Our 4th item is to consider adopting resolution number 2024-12, a reimbursement resolution declaring official intent to issue bonds for the Isabella County Administration Building Complex Rehabilitation Project in the amount not to exceed $11 billion. Madam Administrator, I want to turn this one over to you as well.
And I am really happy to see bond counsel, Eric McLaughlin from Dickinson Wright on the Zoom. Thank you, Eric, for joining
There it
us.
is.
Eric was at Finance last Tuesday and walked us through what this resolution accomplishes. And Eric, please take it away.
Thank you, Nicole. Glad to be with you all again. The resolution before you is a reimbursement resolution. It's a procedural step required by the federal tax code. If in the event the county were to issue bonds and make prior expenditures on a project and wish to reimburse those prior expenditures with bond proceeds from bonds issued at some point in the future. The resolution doesn't require you to issue bonds, doesn't lock you into doing that. It doesn't lock you into issuing bonds in any particular amount. It simply qualifies your prior expenditures within certain limitations set forth in the regulations for reimbursement once you do have those bond proceeds in hand. That said, once I've answered any of your questions, I ask that the board take it up with a roll call vote. And if passed, that I be sent 2 original certified copies of the resolution. Are there any questions?
Questions for Eric, gentlemen? I have none.
So this resolution allows us to go back and grab like the Northern Analytical expenses for the building, the testing, and some of the asbestos abatement activities, anything from the date of adoption of this resolution back 60 days, we can go in and grab any of that. Even I'll have to talk to Eric about this, but even maybe the cost of our temporary relocation if we would need to do so. I do want to reiterate in the fiscal 25 draft budget and going forward, we do have $750,000 payment built in. Worked with Eric and our financial advisor, Andy Campbell from Baker Tilly on that amount with this $11 million in mind, right? Obviously, that annual payment will just be determined by the length of the borrow or the interest rate, or both actually. But we don't know that yet, but worked with them to establish that amount. We still have another step. Maybe Eric is a good, maybe talk about, you said how this, kind of sets our ceiling. It doesn't require us to borrow, but can you explain what the next step would be if the board moves forward with a borrow?
Sure, I'll talk about next steps. But first I want to touch on something you said about the relocation expenses, rental expenses and things like that. That's something I'll discuss with my tax partner. But certainly the reimbursement that would qualify would be what we call preliminary expenditures for purposes of the tax code. That's like design engineering, testing expenses. The 60-day look back would apply to the hard construction costs, like the tearing things out of the space, buying materials. There are different parts of the regulation that apply to each bucket of those expenses. So we would go through and analyze those and see which part of the regulation applies to each of those bucket of expenses. Like I said, I would talk to my tax partner and get an up or down or nuanced answer, more likely from my tax partner, about the any relocation expenses like rental. As far as next steps go, the next step would be the working plan right now is for the county to issue bonds under Act 34, which would require adoption of a resolution approving a notice of intent and publication of a notice of intent, which would start a 45-day referendum period, during which time electors of the county could file a petition for referendum on the question of issuing the bonds. If none are filed, then the county would have acquired the authority under the statute to issue bonds, to proceed and issue bonds. At that point, the next step would be for the board to consider and adopt a bond resolution, which would ultimately formally authorize the bonds and authorize the parameters within which the bonds can be issued. So this is the first procedural step for tax purposes. You could modify this at some point down the line if we needed to. The next step that I discussed was the notice of intent. That is the one that would firmly set the ceiling for the bond issuance amount and the scope of the project that could be financed with the bonds, followed by the bond resolution, which would set in place the parameters within which bonds can be sold. So that's kind of the procedural lay of the land in terms of what we're doing now compared to what we'll have to do the next couple of steps in the future.
Those of you who remember the process for the building the sheriff's office and correctional facility and the borrow that we did there, we didn't do a reimbursing resolution with that. We went right to the notice of intent resolution because we knew what we were doing. We knew the costs. We were ready. Right now, we don't have the final design yet. We're still not quite ready. But what we know is that we do have to rehab the building that you saw. And we'd probably like to reach back to get some of these expenses, right?
Yep.
And definitely include the architectural and engineering soft costs like Eric's talking about. So
Right.
Thank you for that reminder, Eric. It's a good point to make.
As far as the bond issuance process in this case, it would be somewhat different than the process used for the jail facilities. The jail facilities were same type of bond that I was talking about, but it was sold to the United States Department of Agricultural Rural Development Office. So the process was somewhat leaner than the normal bond issuance process. Here, we'd probably be looking at selling the bonds on the open market with a disclosure document, a continuing disclosure undertaking, all things that I'm happy to explain to you at a later point in the process. But the process would be more intensive this time around than with the rural development issue for the jail facilities. So there will be some extra steps involved in this financing compared to the one that you most recently did with me.
Commissioners, any questions from Mr. McLaughlin? No. Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
Have a great night. So hearing none, we will move this item to our regular board session this evening. All right. I just lost my page here. Oh, here it is. Last item for the Finance and Administration Committee is to consider approving the fiscal year 2024 budget amendment number 2024-07, third quarter budget adjustments for general fund, and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same. Madam Administrator, again, this one's all you.
Okay, I have got it. Normally, when we bring these, you would see a third quarter budget adjustment for other funds besides general fund. But there really wasn't anything outstanding there that needed to be corrected that stood out to us. So we are just focusing on general fund tonight. And the story of this budget amendment is positive. The total is actually adding to fund balance almost $56,000. So we have some good news. A lot of that because of additional recreational marijuana distributions to the county. We have received to date over $391,000 in the current fiscal year. So that is expected to continue going forward. So we've built that into the zero base and also in fiscal 24 through this budget amendment. So that extra 131,000 in revenue, as you might imagine, helps to pay for some of these things that aren't offset. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that net out, and we'll talk about some of the things that can't be covered by maybe decreasing another expense and increasing one here. So the first thing you see on there is a reduction of ARPA revenue in the amount of $150,000. And down below, you see a decrease in expenditures of $150,000. That's where we budgeted the AV upgrades for the Board of Commissioners room. Obviously, that's not happening this year because of the abatement. It will be rolled into the rehab project, as can those dollars, because they are earmarked towards that, which is good. So that kind of nets zero. There was a $15,000 you see increase in state reimbursement for managed assigned counsel. And unfortunately, that's offset down below with the managed assigned counsel increase of $15,000 expense. So you can kind of see that's a net zero. The next two actually are third-party contributions for the sheriff's office and an MMRMA, which is our property and liability carrier RAP grant, risk avoidance program grant that he received for that unmanned aerial vehicle we were just discussing. So you can see those revenues coming in, and down below you see the cost, just under $11,700 for that unmanned aerial vehicle. Apparently we can't say drone. State grant medical marijuana. This was an increase of $6,700 because we didn't budget for the grant revenue at the time. And you can see down below, we've got a corresponding increase of $6,700 of expense. So that just nets zero. We did buy again the medical lock boxes, the medication lock boxes, and Veterans Affairs Officer Ian Welch is going to very dutifully hand those out at the Family, Youth and Farm Fair again this July. The next item is also a net zero. You see $27,000 in revenue coming in for the DTE solar special use permit and site plan review for community development budget. And down below, you will see an increase in that same amount for the expenditures. So that just offsets. So what doesn't exactly pay for itself? In administration, down below in the expenditures, you can see we're decreasing salaries and wages and health insurance to the tune of $60,000. That's just some lapsed wages. We've had an accountant position that hasn't been filled for some time. So we have some savings there. And you can see we're pushing those to contract services and attorney fees. So contract services, mainly Maynard Casterison, because we still don't have that on-site accountant, and attorney fees because we've had a few issues. I've had to reach out to legal for direction this year. Continuing down expenses, you can see this net zero in equalization. Remember a few meetings ago, you approved a contract to outsource the equalization department. So this is as of June 1st. So this is taking those remaining salaries and wages and pushing it to contracted services because as we know, that's going to go up. But the great news is that pays for itself because of the model of Preston Community Services and the ability for them to save. There's an increase. Next, you'll see Wise Township Patrol. This is overtime at the sheriff's office, so in the amount of 25,000. We budgeted the revenue from Wise Township in the amount of 25,000, but just forgot to budget the expense and obviously caught that as things are occurring in the expense line. So we do need to build that expense in. You'll see some new equipment for corrections. We talked a little bit at finance about that to set the record straight. One is a server that I believe is moving with the sheriff to his new facility.
Yep.
The next is a washing machine. We do have guests there that we do need to do laundry on a daily basis. To set the record straight, it was not a $16,000 washing machine. I think it was more in the neighborhood of 3,000. It was a used piece of machinery. It costs a little bit to have it installed, but I just want to be clear on that. We did not buy brand new laundry equipment. Moving soon.
Thank you, ma'am.
Homeland Security Grant for emergency management. That's one that just nets out, and we're just moving that expense from one line to another. So you'll see a decrease in one line and increase in another line, just moving that to the appropriate line item. And then the last thing on there, contractual services for remonumentation. Register of Deeds will tell you timing is interesting on these, and that's that whole formula where they give us back a third of our revenues 3 years later, some kind of thing. But she has extraordinary expenses this year, and we need to build in another 10,000. But as you can see up above, we're adding almost 56,000 to fund balance at this time. Are there any questions about that budget amendment?
Commissioners? Madam Administrator, thank you for the explanation. Thank you. None, we will move this budget amendment to our regular board session here shortly. And Mr. Chair, that concludes the work of the Finance and Administration Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Embry, and thank you for shouldering that load all by yourself tonight.
My pleasure, sir.
Up next is Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
All right, up first, Chair, is consider approving the payment of milestone 6 in the amount of $439,746.80 for the radio tower project. Sheriff Min, go over this.
Good evening.
Sheriff.
So I can go through the whole spiel again. This is milestone 6. Milestone 5, you didn't see, that was a non-billable. This is for our project that we were granted the $4.8 million for from the state. No funds come from general fund or any other budget from the county. We do have to pay for that, and then we reimburse that. We have the process down to an art. My administrative supervisor was able to electronically fund transfer to Motorola, and we get a instant paid, and then we submit that to DTMB. Within a couple days, they've got it back in our coffers. So it's worked pretty well. Close to 2.1 million spent on this project thus far. The tower is erect. I think I mentioned at last meeting, the Nicoya dishes are on it. They're working on some power. They're wiring that up at this point in time. Gadgets into the shed. And then we're going to flip that switch on hopefully late August, 1st September, and see how well it works and go from there. So nothing new with this one. The milestones probably will slow down a little bit until we get into the next phase here, but there may be one more, but I don't believe there is. So.
Drove by that tower today. It's quite tall. It dwarfs that original one.
Yeah, monopole 195 feet. So it gets up there and makes some distance. They did that so it would connect to our current tower that's in the west part of the county. 6306 or 6303 is a tower number. And then there is a tower like 4129 in Midland County. So it'll connect to that one and make a complete loop. So if any of those go down, we still have communication. So it's a nice redundancy backup for us for sure.
Took a really big crane, right? I was at the health department that day and I saw the crane, and then when I came out, it was gone. So I was going, wow.
They were fast. I mean, they've done this a few times. They'd put a piece on, throw it up there, put a piece on, throw it up there. It was fast. Yeah, it grew within a few hours.
there any other questions on this milestone of the project? All right, we'll move this forward to tonight's session. And next item is consider approving the Inmate Communications General Service Agreement dated June 18th, 2024, between Combined Public Communications and Isabella County on behalf of Isabella County Sheriff's Office.
I believe Heidi from Clark's had mentioned this, that we were looking at a new vendor for our inmate phone visitation. We provide that tablet program to them, which has movies they can rent and music and so forth. Our current vendor we've had for quite a while. They doesn't appear they've stayed within the market to be valuable to us as far as the revenue that we come out of the receive out of this. One of the things that we were assured was they were going to help take care of us in the new building, and then that wasn't the case. So we decided maybe it was time to review that. So we did go out to review for new products. CPC is a company that's in Michigan, is in current jails. They operate almost identical, all these companies do, to what our current company does. Still all those same services are provided the same way. A few of the key factors with CPC is they'll give a tablet to every inmate. So they already have some things that are automatically on there. They don't have to pay for, so every inmate gets one. The phone calls can be made off in those tablets along with the video visitations. What that means was we were able to go into most of the cells, the pied-shaped cells that you've seen in the tours, and remove some of the detention seating and additional hardwired phones. We don't need as many, so we put one in each. It's also a backup for emergency stuff, so we had to have one in there. But that saved us quite a bit of money by removing all of the detention furniture and not requiring all of those needs. So that was one key factor into it. The second was we were going to have to purchase a couple of polycoms, and those aren't necessarily cheap, for public defenders, courts, telehealth, telemedical stuff within the pod. They have a system that is a Polycom system that they're going to put in for us. So that saved us some money as well. They're pulling all the wires and the spaghetti mess that seems to be occurring out there right now by thousands of miles of Cat5 cabling, and they're going to do that for us for free. And they're going to mount all of their hardware. Their hardware, including the tablets, are all charger racks that are secured inside the cells, which will cut down on a lot of work from my staff having to hand these things out and pull them back and charge them and stuff. So we're really excited about that as well. They did give us a breakdown of the daily population that we have currently. And roughly, it looks like we should garner about another $50,000 in revenue if we stay at that average daily population. So really been good to work with. They do something that the other company doesn't do, which is allows us to upload things to the tablet. So we've been in discussions with the schools, with Mount Pleasant Schools, has their program in there where they literally can upload a book or material to their tablets and send them back to their cells to continue their studies. So I just received a thing from the Mount Pleasant Schools here recently that to date this year we're 10 graduates from the jail with their diplomas. So that's pretty amazing. So we want to really enhance that program and keep that going as best as we can. So questions?
I just think
Yes,
it's
sir.
just a comment. I think that's so great that educational piece there, because it's just the opposite of kind of jail, right?
Nope, it's a great thing to have there. Our partnership with Mount Pleasant Schools are really good. One thing I didn't mention was there is no general fund dollars that we have to pay out of pocket for any of this. They take their portion of the revenue for their company, so we're not paying anything out of pocket for that either. So
I spoke with Pat Heitman, who runs adult education and education in the jail, and she's very excited about the new space and potential use of it for their services. Also, I did want to state that so the CPC estimated cost savings on you mentioned equipment and installation, $155,000, and then of course if you add the additional $50,000 revenue potential, the switch would save us $200,000 plus.
It's a good project to start. We're gonna start that at the beginning of the when we move to the new facility. So we'll keep our other one and our current vendor. I think they kind of got the feeling, I think they're trying to weed out maybe some of the smaller or mid-sized counties. They gave us a month-to-month contract, so it's nothing more than a 30-day notice. So we shouldn't have any issues with moving away from their contract. So really, it's at this point, we haven't seen any non-wins with this one.
Right.
Fantastic.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll move this on to the work session. Thank you, Sheriff Main.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Okay, last up is consider approving the Victims' Right Prosecutor Grant application for fiscal years 2025 in the amount of $149,855. This is a grant that the county has been involved in for as long as I've been on here. We started out with one victim advocate. This will actually have two positions, a coordinator and an advocate. And there's also a little bit of money for some computers in there. So I say we don't have Prosecutor Barbara here. We got Mark here today.
The prosecutor's office, and Mr. Barberry has given you a staff report, I think outlines everything. And so we're asking that the victim rights grant application be approved through the Department of Health and Human Services. They've already gotten back with us pre-approving that amount that's listed. And it does cover those two positions, those two full-time victim advocate positions in our office, as well as computer system and other services. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions? It's been, like I said, we've supported the program for quite a while, and I think it'd be very hard for the prosecutor's office to operate without that. So
Jim Hughes was, I think, our original victim advocate. Probably most of you or all of you don't know him, but that was a very long time ago. So,
okay, any more questions? Seeing none, we'll move that forward to tonight's work session. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll check. Work on that name. With that, Mr. Chairman, that completes the work of the Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
Thank you, commissioners, and we have no human resources and public works business, no intergovernmental affairs, no administrator controller issues, no unfinished or new business. Brings us down to general public comment. Is there anyone for general public comment? Okay, seeing no one for general public comment, announcements, commissioners, any announcements? Yes, sir.
To thank just announce that the congratulations to the Beal City Aggies for winning 2 state titles in a row.
Yeah, 2 in a row.
The sheriff's department and the fire department that escorted them into town. That's always great for the kids and good deal. One other thing is the August 6th primary, starting to see some pop-up signs. And they really don't tell the whole truth. These 3 things that are on our ballot are all renewals. So there's no new taxes. Everybody seems to think that vote no and get rid of the taxes, but these are all renewals. So
Good point. Thanks for bringing that up. They are all renewals. I just have one announcement. As Administrator Frost mentioned, Council of Governments meets tomorrow night at Coe Township at 7 p.m. And I would like to wish everyone a happy Juneteenth tomorrow.
That's right.
So, yes, sir.
I found out that the Citizens for Local Choice will not be on the ballot and the Axe My Tax will not be on the ballot. They didn't get enough signatures and the deadline has passed.
Under announcements, seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
support.
Supported, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned at 6:04.